What up, boxing family? Welcome to the King Me Boxing channel. Like always, it's your boy Shay, and I'm gonna try something new in this video. I'm just gonna try to freestyle it. We're just gonna go straight off the script, and I want to be talking about none other than Canelo Alvarez on this video and his return and the uproar that it's causing for taking on his mandatory challenger in Anthony Yildirim. So let's get right to it. Anyway, Canelo Alvarez is slated to return February 27th against none other than his former sparring partner in Anthony Yildirim. It is an overmatched opponent. I agree. I'm not happy with it, but nevertheless, I can't knock him, especially when he just beat what many deemed as the top guy at 168 in Caleb Smith. Now, was he the top guy? Not necessarily, but his resume was most likely the best out there, and he was just knocked off by Canelo Alvarez. He took the WBA and Ring Magazine championship belts, and he was also able to pick up the WBC belt in that fight. So just 2 months later, he turns around and now he's got to defend his WBC strap. A lot of people, though, have issues with whom he's defending it against, and I don't blame him for that. Anthony Yildirim, again, is an overmatched opponent. I wish he could have fought somebody else, like perhaps a David Benavidez, who lost that same belt on the scales last year. I don't understand why the sanctioning bodies wouldn't go with that option, but it's not like Canelo Alvarez actively asked for the Anthony Yildirim fight or, stepped around David Benavidez to fight Yildirim. It's just a fight that he was given, and nonetheless, he needs to uphold it in order for him not to get stripped and continue with this path of becoming undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. So we're going to talk about a few things. There's an article over at Boxing Scene that I want to discuss that just recently came out where Timothy Bradley pretty much dogs the crap out of Anthony Yildirim and Canelo Alvarez. So we'll look that over. If you guys want to follow through with this and read it on your own time, by all means, I'll leave the link on the description box below. So let's get right down to it. Timothy Bradley said, in a fight like this, Canelo should look very, very impressive, and he should win this fight in a spectacular fashion. It should be a highlight reel knockout, Sports Center top 10 knockouts in all of boxing by the end of 2021. When all is said and done, he could raise his profile and his standing with the knockout win, because that's what a lot of fans want to see. Yildirim should get stopped before round 6. He's a mandatory challenger who deserves to fight Canelo according to the sanctioning bodies. But at this point, we know what these sanctioning bodies are about: moving guys into certain places that can benefit their pockets, their franchise, and improve the way their marquee fighters look. Why isn't a guy like David Benavidez, who had that title and was one of the youngest guys ever to win the same title, in line for a chance to try to win it back instead? Excellent question, Timothy Bradley. I think it was a rhetorical question, though, because you just answered yourself. You just said it. If anything, the issue lies with the sanctioning bodies, not so much the fighter who's just taking up the challenge so he won't get stripped. These sanctioning bodies are corrupt. We all know this. We're all aware of this. Don't take it out on the fighter. Go to the sanctioning bodies and question them, question those folks, because at the end of the day, a fighter is just doing what he has to do in order for him to retain that belt. So anyway, he went on to state that the only problem I have with Alvarez, he's not fighting the best guys right now. He's winning these belts, challenging guys in different weight classes. You have a guy at 168 in Benavidez who wants all of the smoke, but Canelo won't fight him. You have a guy in Charlo who would probably, and I highlighted that, probably be willing to go up to fight Canelo. There's always talk about how these guys don't really want the fight, or how the money isn't right, or how they haven't fought enough names to be worthy of the shot. But come on, stop it. It's just a way to avoid a fighter and a fight you don't want. So I highlighted probably because we don't know. Charlo has said that he's willing to move up, but we don't know. It's a probable thing. That means that it could happen and it might not. So yeah, it's unfortunate for David Benavidez not to have or be deemed the mandatory challenger for Saul Canelo Alvarez, but he did lose that belt on the scales. It sucks. His undisciplinary action is what led him to be in the predicament that he's in. Is it fair to him? Not really, but if he were to have maintained his discipline last year, he would be a guy that Canelo would be actively seeking right now. The reason why he's not, though, is because he doesn't possess a belt and he doesn't possess the title of a mandatory challenger. Simple as that. Again, if there is any issue here, it is with the sanctioning bodies. Timothy Bradley went on to say Yildirim is a punching bag. I watched this fight against Chris Eubank Jr. and he got smoked in that fight. I saw him against Darrell. The Darrell fight was an exciting wild fight and it ended prematurely, but he lost. That is his most recent fight and it was 2 years ago. Now he's going to step up against Canelo and do better than that. He's one-dimensional, so he pretty much just trashes Avni Yildirim, which is fine. I mean, we know that this is not the caliber level type of opponent that's going to pose any serious issue to Canelo. If anything, it's a fight where Canelo's going to look good. That's honestly the truth. It's a fight where Canelo's just going to come out there, you know, show off a few, you know, feints and, you know, elusiveness of his, you know, upper body movement and counter him and pretty much put him away at any given moment and just call it a day. But nevertheless, he finished off by saying, you look at Yildirim and he's fought a few guys, but anytime he has stepped up his class of opponent, he's been destroyed. He looks terrible. He gets beaten. If Canelo does not knock this guy out, he cannot possibly be considered the best pound for pound fighter in the world. It's just a fight. It's nothing that I would be willing to pay for to watch. So everybody is, you know, has their own reservations and are deemed to have their own opinion. So I don't agree with everything that Timothy Bradley had to say, but I do agree with a few things. Nevertheless, yes, it is an overmatched opponent. Yes, Canelo should be able to dispose of him relatively easy, but I think he's missing the bigger picture here. This is an intermediate fight. This is a mandatory fight, so it holds some type of weight, but it also serves as a tune-up fight because Canelo's gonna be fighting 3 to 4 times this year. Canelo is the biggest name in the sport of boxing, and he's gonna be fighting 3 to 4 times this year, being extremely active, even more so than a lot of these younger up-and-comer fighters that should be active themselves. I think that's amazing. I think that the fact that he is taking a tune-up / mandatory fight in between 2 big fights, the likes of, you know, Caleb Smith and then the tune-up fight and then Billy Joe Saunders in May, I think it's fine. I think if he's going to be delivering those type of fights, the Caleb Smith, the Billy Joe Saunders, the Caleb Plants, if he's going to be able to deliver those type of fights within 1 year, then it's okay for him to take a tune-up fight in between just to make sure that everything keeps, you know, turning properly, the gears keep on spinning properly and meshing properly. So I'm not too against it. Nevertheless, what I find interesting is that everybody's in an uproar about Avni Yildirim and the level of opponent that he is and the low level of challenge that he poses. Yet nobody wants to bash these other fighters that they so deem as, you know, threats to Canelo, who have made a career out of fighting those type of opponents, those caliber type of opponents. Like for instance, if we look at Caleb Plant's career, his best win comes against Jose Uzcategui. Aside from that, all the other guys are relatively on the same level as Avni Yildirim in terms of skill and talent. David Benavidez, his best win, Anthony Darrell, an over-the-hill Anthony Darrell. Aside from that, it's not very impressive. Demetrius Andrade, same thing. Jermall Charlo, best win comes against Sergey Derevyanchenko, who had just lost his last fight against Triple G. Granted, it was a close fight, but he lost it. And aside from that, Jermall Charlo had done nothing significant in years, and his last significant win was back 1 weight division south against Julian Williams like 5 years ago. Triple G, he arguably lost that Sergey fight, and he just fought Steve Rose and Camille Zaramata since his loss to Canelo. So what are these guys really doing? If Canelo is locked in to possibly become undisputed champion by the end of 2021 or early 2022, that gives Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, even Triple G and David Benavidez the opportunity to become ranked and contenders at any sanctioning body that they choose to, and pretty much force Canelo's hand when he becomes undisputed, if he does become undisputed, because he will possess all the belts, so that all roads will lead to Canelo. And at that point, if Canelo doesn't take those fights on, he'll either get stripped or be deemed as a duck, or both. So what do they not see? Do they not understand how this works? If Canelo is serious, he does seem very serious about becoming undisputed. And let's say if Jermall Charlo moves up, all right, and he takes on all these other names, and you know he's able to become ranked and become a #1 contender for, say, the WBC belt. So once Canelo finishes off, you know, becoming undisputed, let's say he manages to go through the gauntlet and become undisputed by mid-2022, then the mandatory challenger, then Jermall Charlo, is forcing Canelo's hand pretty much to face him. And so can anybody else follow the same trajectory to force Canelo's hand once he possesses all the belts. Because if he doesn't, then guess what? What is Canelo gonna look like? a duck, because if he doesn't fight, let's say Jamal Charlo in that situation, then it's gonna really seem like he is avoiding a conflict with him. So I think these guys could go about it a whole lot differently. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy within the fandom, within the sport itself. I think the WBC pretty much effed up by not giving David Benavidez a shot at Canelo Alvarez. I think the WBC is protecting their marquee fighter. I think if there's any issues here, they lie with the sanctioning bodies. I think these sanctioning bodies, are corrupt, and they're very detrimental to the sport itself. They're not delivering on the best fights available. They're giving us what they think is going to give them the most return and the biggest profit. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for a lot more unbiased boxing content to come. Like always, this is Shay at King Me Boxing Channel signing out.